What's up, movie nerds and basketball geeks? Welcome back to Movie Ball. That's the intro. Today we are sliding over to the movie side of things, so if you're here for that basketball talk, well, I've let you down. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, directed by Andrea Overdahl. This is the director of The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which was not a big movie. A lot of people probably haven't seen it. It was on Netflix, and it was a decent horror film that really caught my attention. It wasn't anything, that sparkled with originality or creativity per se, but it was a horror movie that was contained well to a nice small environment. It had good actors with good dialogue, and they weren't stupid characters making dumb decisions. This is a rare thing in horror movies. I was looking forward to this movie for a number of reasons. I'm a pretty big horror fan, and usually horror movies are never good these days, and I never wind up really liking most of them, but I'm always excited to see horror movies because, in a sea of 1,000 bad horror movies, you'll find one really good one, and it makes it all worth it. Also, the summer movie season is coming to a close. There's not a lot of high-profile films left, and this is one of the few movies left in the season that I was genuinely looking forward to for the rest of this month. And I gotta say, I was a little disappointed with this film. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark definitely caters to a younger audience, which is fine, but I don't feel like that's how they really marketed the film. I probably should have expected that since it is based off of a children's book, and it's not like Goosebumps in the sense that that movie was basically aimed at like young middle schoolers, maybe even elementary schoolers, for a more family-friendly entertainment type deal, whereas Scary Stories, as I'm seeing, is kind of, a lot of people saying it's like a gateway horror film where it's trying to basically be designed to attract younger moviegoers and get people who aren't really into horror films to explore, expand their horizons and kind of join the horror bandwagon. And I think that will work for a younger crowd, and that's why it is aimed at a more preteen/young high schooler audience. But unfortunately, nothing in this film is really incredible in any sense of the word, other than the amazing practical effects that honestly could be Oscar worthy. The way they designed these creatures and what they did with these monsters was very, just very talented people did that. Aside from the fantastic special and practical effects used to create these monsters and ghoulish creatures, there's nothing in this film that is really relatively close to incredible or even really good. And I don't think it's a bad movie by any sense of the word. It's fine. It's just that after 40 minutes, you know where everything's going, and it plays out in a very conventional way that we've seen in tons of movies before, and I get that it's aimed at a younger audience, so unfortunately, after 40 minutes, like I said, it just gets very repetitive and predictable throughout its runtime. The whole scenario behind the scares in this movie is pretty bland, unfortunately. They take these chilling effects and spooky-looking creatures and plop them into these scary stories that unfold with these characters being pretty fearful of some idea for a couple of minutes. And that's basically the extent of these villains that we get to see in this film. These monsters and creatures are in their segments for no longer than about 5 minutes because they're designed for these one specific characters throughout the film to, taunt them and scare them. And it doesn't really do anything for the audience, at least for me, because they're not in it enough. There's not enough meat to the story or behind the character of these ghoulish demons or whatever you want to call them to really make them particularly scary or effective. But from a film standpoint, there isn't anything to get behind. It's just like, oh, we have another monster coming in. It's creepy looking. The character's going to be scared, and that's basically what we get out of the movie. That's not to say some of these stories aren't a little cringy and don't have a decent amount of tension to them, but it's just that it's all very familiar territory. However, on the other hand, it is territory that the target demographic will relate to and will definitely eat up. See, if I had a kid, and I don't know where I got the kid from, and I'd probably adopt because I just feel like it's pure evil to bring a kid into this world that looks like me. See, if I had a kid and I watched this movie with them, I could enjoy it for the pure fact that I know that they're the target demographic and they're enjoying it, so I could kind of have this experience where I'm bonding with them and enjoying it for that reason. It does take quite a bit from the theatrical Goosebumps film that was released about 4 years ago. The narrative is pretty similar, and it does try to do it a little edgier because it is PG-13 and it is probably the books that were scarier as kids. But I gotta tell you, I vastly prefer the Goosebumps movie more as a form of entertainment value, just because that movie has a more humorous and jokey vibe that resonated more so with me, and I can always get behind comedy in films. It's my favorite genre. So when I saw that this movie began and started off with a more kind of humorous side to it than I expected, I was on board. I was into it until those comedic characters are sidelined. It loses that energy totally, and it became more boring to me personally. Whereas if it continued to be a little more comedic and jokey, not that it has to be overbearing with jokes and stupid slapstick or anything like that, but that pace would have worked much better for me as a film goer. Even when it loses touch with its more comedic side, which is pretty early on, the film still never really gains any traction in the horror department to feel necessarily scary or creepy enough, and I'm never, as a moviegoer, fulfilled by what it's doing. Overall, it's not a bad movie. The young actors are all good and believable. There were moments where I was invested. The practical effects and the creature designs are all spectacular, and the movie will do its job for its intended audience. However, I wanted to be scared. I wanted to be creeped out. I wanted to have chills, and I wanted to have a sense of dread and be on edge throughout the runtime. I don't think that if you're a horror movie regular, you're going to be provided with those sensations, but that isn't to say that you can't find some amusement with this film. I'm going to give Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark a 6.5 out of 10. Also, it's 2019. I thought we were done with horror movie characters tripping over nothing when they're running away from some kind of situation. It happens like 3 or 4 times in this movie, and I was just like, are you kidding? No one answered, because I said it in my head. You know what time it is? It's time to get that like button and smash it. Treat the like button like it's a piñata. You know, you're over your friend's birthday party. Your friend is only 7 years old, so that's why he has a piñata still. You know, your friend's turning 7 years old, but it doesn't matter because what's more important, him turning 7 and smashing a piñata for candy to fall out? So that piñata is just one huge like button, and once you dismantle it and it falls apart, it's gonna be oozing with smaller little like buttons, and you're just gonna, with all the other kids, they're gonna think it's pieces of candy, but you're running over there to grab more like buttons, and they're trying to grab them, and you're just stomping on all of them. The video's over.